Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Houselights, our special intermission episodes, where we are going to be taking a look at the works of Mel Brooks in the year 1974. But before we get started with that, because I know that you were expecting Francis Ford Coppola, but we decided to have a little bit of fun right here. I'm one of your hosts, John Mills. Joining me today is, of course, Tristan Riddell. Tristan, how are you? Here to talk about Mel Brooks's seminal film 1974's Blazing Saddles.
I'm very excited to talk to you tonight, and we're sad to tell you that Darren Moser, the one and only, is not going to make it tonight because he had other commitments, and that's actually one of the reasons why we had to postpone Francis Ford Coppola of the 70s. And so we were thinking, what else could we do? Well, let's stay in the 70s, and holy crap, like Mel Brooks, like one of only 15 directors in history, I think, to come out with 2 movies in 1 year. I mean, this is destiny.
Which is an odd parallel to something we're going to cover about Francis Ford Coppola.
That's right.
In the 1970s. I don't know. Directors, I don't know if they were just more efficient in the 1970s or they were just, maybe there was some drug being passed around at parties that made them just that much more energetic. But 2 movies
the Johnny
in 1
Cash
year.
special. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, before we get started, thenerdparty.com/contact is where you can reach out to us here at the Houselights show. Let us know what you think, directors you'd like to hear us talk about. You can reach us on social media at Joy Nerd Party on Twitter. Look for the Nerd Party on Facebook and Instagram. And other than that, send up smoke signals and let us know what you're thinking. So I'm really super excited, actually, to talk about Blazing Saddles, because this is a movie that definitely comes up about every 5 years. And the conversation is always about this movie could never be made today. And every 5 years, people have that conversation. And so that will inevitably be part of this. Now, it comes out in 1974. It's Mel Brooks's loving send-up of the Western genre and also running commentary on racism, basically. And I know that I have a long history with this. This movie was released the year that I was born. Like 1974 was a hell of a year for movies. Okay. Right. Like you got Godfather Part 2, you got The Conversation, you got Blazing Saddles, you got Young Frankenstein. Like 1974 is a special year, right? You give me that, right?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to be super interested here because I know part of the answer with you, but I know that for me, my first encounter with this is probably going to raise some eyebrows about my parents' parenting style. So I got to ask you, Tristan, coming at Blazing Saddles, when was the first time you encountered it? What age were you? What format was it? And were your parents in the room?
Okay. So the first time I saw this I was not born in 1974.
That is true.
I was born in 86.
Also a good year for film.
I think so too. Because
Yeah.
I mean, it was Star Trek 4, Top Gun, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You like some of those.
I do.
So yeah, it was, I think it was in high school. I can't remember what year, but it was during my film phase. Like when I was just like, I was trying to gobble up everything that I possibly could. Like I was trying to catch up on the classics that I missed, watch the indie stuff, watch some foreign stuff. I was really trying to, like broaden my knowledge outside of just like my dad's action films, like that or Star Trek and Star Wars, go beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was definitely my coffee phase, writing bad poetry, era of high school. And so I picked up Blazing Saddles because, I'm a big fan of Young Frankenstein, History of the World Part 1, Spaceballs. I love all those movies. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna pick up Blazing Saddles, not knowing anything about it. And so I started to watch it by myself, and I don't get past the Slim Pickens and Harvey Korman scene. the first one.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
I'm like, oh, good Lord. Like, this is not for me. I was like, good Lord. Like, just like the language, the slurs, and also just like how slow it was. I was like, this is the second scene, and we're like, how many minutes in? And like one camera angle in the office. I was like, okay, oof, I can't do this right now. And then I think it was like a year or two later, still in high school, and I was with a bunch of friends, and they got somebody picked up a bunch of movies at Blockbuster, and they said like, oh, let's watch this one. And I didn't say anything. I was just like, yeah, sure, fine, okay, whatever. And so they popped in Blazing Saddles, and three of like the seven people who were there said, let's watch something else, right at the same scene that I bailed at.
Wow. Okay.
A couple of years before.
Fair enough.
And then so I'd never seen it. I've never seen it until last night in preparation for this podcast.
Amazing.
And so I watched it all the way through for my first time last night at the time of this recording. I'm 35 years old, and it was the first time I saw Blazing Saddles all the way through.
Now, I don't think that there is a 4K remaster of this released yet.
No.
So Blu-ray, or did you just rent it digitally?
HD digitally.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, for the flip side of the coin, I cannot remember a time in my life where Blazing Saddles was not some sort of reference for me. I was very young. I know I was 10 or younger when I saw this movie for the first time. Rented on videotape, didn't really know what was going on, sort of thing, but found certain parts of it hysterical, right? Like I always thought the ending was a riot. But I think that what your experience and my experience might speak to is I had my dad there with me to act as sort of like a shepherd through the picture, right?
Okay, so he was your Virgil.
Basically. And he got, I'm a younger kid and I'm not really sure. I mean, there's that one special word, and that was never okay to say, sort of thing. And my dad's sort of explaining, well, you'll notice only the dumbest people in the movie use it, and it's a running commentary on you'd have to be an idiot and, different aspects of it. But my dad would laugh, and when you're watching a comedy with your dad and he laughs, that helps shape what you think is funny.
Oh, absolutely.
But the thing is, growing up with my friends, right, especially when I got to high school, there were certain scenes, like we loved Cleavon Little. I think Cleavon Little is so terrific. And, so many lines that he delivers with just absolute charm and skill. It's like, well, to tell a family secret, my grandmother was Dutch, that sort of thing. So it's always been just a part of my comedy life, what I consider funny. And for this rewatch, I actually decided to show it to middle child. I did.
Oh, okay.
And I said, listen,
okay,
this is going to be a thing, because of the fact that there is that conversation, that sensibilities are so different now. And understanding also, it would be important for me to be in the role that my dad had, which was explaining what's going on here, because this is definitely an adult comedy, right? And so you might say, well, why would you show it to a kid then? Well, it's an adult comedy in the sense that I think it's only gotten funnier to me through the years because of the fact that it's such a good send-up of the Western genre itself, right? It is something that I didn't get into Westerns until later. And when I got into Westerns, Blazing Saddles started working on a different level. So I have to ask you, do you see that now that you've had a long enough history with watching film? Do you see it as an effective parody of the Western genre as a whole?
That's hard to say, because I've never been that big of a Western fan. I have nothing against the Western. I really don't. There's a few that I really enjoy, but I usually don't enjoy them for the Western aspect of it. Uh, I So I can't really say too terribly much because everything that I know about Westerns is very stereotypical. It's very, like showdown, you know, okay corral, like throw the reins of the horse just slightly around the
Hmm.
around the around the pole, whole life on there. Who cares if it runs away? So a parody of the Western, I don't know, like as a commentary on how you have to be an idiot to be this type of racist or this kind of fool. I think I definitely get what they're going for with that, but I can't speak. It's a long story short. I can't really speak to the Western aspect of it too terribly much.
So, do you think this movie works better if you know Westerns and is less accessible if you don't know them terribly well? Because the time period that this is released, 1974, the Western has just sort of exited the consciousness.
Yeah, it's
And
moving its way
so,
out.
yeah, but it is like Blazing Saddles exists right in between the Western and the postmodern Western, right? Like spaghetti Westerns are a thing still, but we're about to go into years later the postmodern reexamination of the Western and a slightly more realistic look at the way life was in the Old West. Do you think that this movie suffers from the fact that it's so far away from that reference point?
I think I think potentially. I mean, there's a lot of times when you look at spoof films like this, like there's certain times, like if you look at the Naked Gun movies, sometimes there's goofy things that happen that everybody can laugh at, and other times there are references that just fall flat
Yes.
because you're like, oh, they made a Watergate reference, or like they like there's some political reference to a VP candidate that ran 45 years ago. You're like, okay, like
Right.
you'd have to really dive deep to get it. It would be like making a like an Al Gore reference in a movie that came out last week, like that kind of thing. So I'd say that I think it definitely suffers from the distance because we weren't like people my age and younger weren't really raised on westerns. Like I was born in the 80s, raised in the 90s. There weren't a lot of westerns. And I think Cowboys and and Aliens came out, and that was like the first Western in how many years that we had. And like back in the 60s and 50s and before, you had one at least once a year, like a mainstream one, like if not including the spaghetti westerns, of course, but like mainstream, you know, big stars. Like even Mel Brooks even ran into John Wayne while making Blazing Saddles, or like he was in pre-production for it. He ran into him in the commissary, and
Wow.
he handed him the script because like John Wayne said like, oh hey, I heard you're making a western. He's like, yeah, do you want to be in it? Like even if it's just cameo, like do you want to be in it? And he read the script. He says, it's like, yeah, this is way too dirty. I don't think I can be in something this dirty, but I'll be the first in line to see it.
That's all. But see, that's awesome. That's great that there would be that type of support. Uh, in terms of that, though, do you think that the comedy in this needs that parody to insulate it from some of the modern criticism about its sensibilities?
And I think in order to achieve satire of this level where you can get away with saying something repeat like over and over again, like and this is what we're dancing around, but like you wouldn't be able to make this film today because of the n-word. Like you can't even
Sure.
say it comedically today. You can't even say it satirically today. You can't do satirically racist things in movies and television because in the name of satire. You're just like you can't do it as a spin of the negative in a funny way. That's just not
Hmm.
allowed anymore. And so back then, of course, if you wanted to do something satirical, it was easiest to do it in as a parody. And so I think if you're just gonna do a satirical take on the idiocy and the damage of racism and what it can do black people and Asian people and everything like that. Obviously, a more focus on black people. You have to do it in a parody of the Old West, because it wouldn't have, like, if it was Richard Pryor instead of Cleveland Little, which it was originally intended to be, and you did a modern take on it, but a satirical view of racism, it wouldn't have flown as well as setting it in the Old West, because you wouldn't have had that reference point of the Old West to jump off of, and also, at the same time, it gives kind of a disconnect. And I think it's a disconnect that white audiences need. It's the reason why Green Book, won Best Picture, is because it's comfortable anti-racism. It doesn't fly in the face of it doesn't make somebody look at themselves and say, like, oh my God, like, I need to reevaluate how I view other people who don't look like me. But when you have something as safe like Green Book, you're just like, oh yeah, racism is bad because that took place in, like the 50s or 60s or whatever. They didn't know what they were doing back then. And when you have Blazing Saddles, with that Western feel, you're able to say, oh my God, like, I can't even imagine being a black man or an Asian person in the Old West. That's ridiculous. They treated them so poorly. And that's the reason why it was able to get made, is because you had that disconnect and that safety net for a white audience.
I'm going to offer a little counterpoint on that.
Please do.
Where I come from with that is that word and some of the other slurs have never been, after a certain point, quote unquote, okay to say. So I think that Blazing Saddles, even in the year that it comes out, is a movie where, now I was born in 1974, so I don't know. So fast forward just 10 years later, that's a word that is shocking to hear. Oh my
Absolutely.
God, somebody said that. And I think that it actually acts, just to offer the counterpoint, as something that's a splash of cold water, because you realize how wrong it is to say that. And it's not couched in the same sort of way that a Tarantino movie might use it, which I think gives you a safety valve because they're modern day exploitation movies. Blazing Saddles, when you hear it, it's uncomfortable. And I think that the most successful comedies are transgressive. They make you uncomfortable so that they can make you laugh in the next gag, because it throws you off balance. It's the same reason that, like, a horror movie has people in the shower or having sex before the killer shows up, because it puts you in an uncomfortable space where you don't want to see what's going to happen next. Comedy sort of can invert that and say, I've made you uncomfortable. Okay, I'm going to make you laugh now, so that it doesn't continue to be awkward and painful after that point. Maybe I'm reaching. I don't know. Because while I was watching it this time, one of the things I tried to look at it as was, does this movie work without that? Does it work okay without it? And the conclusion I came to is this movie works perfectly fine without it. It has to be back in the early 70s that they're trying to shock the audience to make the point that it's not okay. Because as I watch it today, almost 50 years later, I say that this word wouldn't be needed now. You could make this movie and just literally pluck those words out, and it works perfectly fine. So I can contextualize it as saying it obviously is existing as a way to slap the audience in the face and make them understand the message that's being given. That's how I approach it, at least. So I think that when you couple that with some of the other things that happen throughout the course of the movie, I think also what happens, to speak to your experience about how, this is the second scene and it's not really working for me. I definitely think that the movie really comes alive once Gene Wilder shows up.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yes. Gene Wilder is just an absolute treasure, and I guess I should say he was an absolute treasure. But he by far made me laugh the hardest in this movie. I think Gene Wilder is what made me laugh in this movie, and I just I love the part where he says, he's like, these are people of the
Yeah.
land.
Yep.
And I think it's even funnier when you know the story behind the scene, about how, for those of you who don't know, is that like that was ad-libbed by Gene Wilder, and the laugh that Cleveland Little
Oh,
gave is completely genuine.
yes. Oh, and you can tell. Like, it completely works because you can tell that Cleavon Little is honestly taken off guard by what he said. And it really, I think, underscores the fact that this, whatever you think works about this movie, works because the chemistry between the actors. And that includes Madeline Kahn, who I think gets unfairly overlooked a lot with this movie, because I think that she is such a comic uh, firebrand overall. I'm a huge Madeline Kahn fan, as I think probably I'm not saying anything groundbreaking there.
I was gonna say, like, if you're living and breathing, you should be a huge Madeline Kahn fan.
But one of the things that I had as a great moment was my kids have seen Clue. And so I was able to say to middle child, I said, "You remember her from Clue?" And she said, "Who was she in Clue?" And I told her, "Oh, she was, the wife with
The
the red hair,
flames, the
the
white
flames."
flames.
And she lit up. And she said, "Oh, she's fantastic." I said, "Exactly. Pay attention to her." So do you think that with the reputation that this movie has, and with the attention that rightly gets put on Wilder and Little, do you think that Madeline Kahn gets enough credit for what magic happens on screen?
I don't. I think from what I've heard, or I honestly have forgot that, because I hadn't seen it. Like, I honestly didn't know that Madeline Kahn was in it. So not a lot of people talk about Madeline Kahn with this movie. But to be completely honest, I don't think that she was a heavy hitter in this film.
Really?
I really don't. I mean, like, I'm a big Madeline Kahn fan. Like, I absolutely loved her in what I've seen of hers. But with this one, I felt like she was. I thought she was. I felt like she was underutilized. I think that she wasn't given enough to do,
Hmm.
and I thought the song went on way too long. Good lord, that went on way too long. And I
Really?
didn't even think the song was funny. And I thought moments were funny in the seduction scene, but it just, no, I thought she was miscast.
Really?
I did. I genuinely think she was miscast. I feel like you either need to bulk up the role or get somebody else, because I feel like she was wasted.
Really? See, I think that she was great in the role. I thought that I didn't have the same reaction to the song, specifically because, and I had to, middle child, we had a sort of a running discussion through everything. And I was laughing because, she was hitting the flat notes, and the song is so bad overall. I thought it was just such a great send up of that sultry siren roll
Hmm.
that because she's none of that. She's not anything like the role that they're presenting her as. I thought that's what worked so great about it. But I can see what you're saying in terms of the fact that she's there for that, and then the seduction scene, and then she is there.
And then she's just kind of gone. Yeah. I mean, like, we see her, but she's just kind of there. And like, she's there and she gets smacked around. And yeah, it was just kind of weird. I was expecting, like, when I saw Madeline Kahn's name pop up in the opening credits, I was like, "Oh, holy crap. Yes. This is going to be awesome." And then she didn't show up for such a long time. I was like, "Okay, maybe it'll be just a great cameo." And yeah, I was not laughing.
Okay. I mean, I do laugh, but like, it's one of those things where, is there an argument for then, because you mentioned the word cameo, a cameo seems to have evolved over time. Cameos now, when I think of cameo, it's person shows up in a scene,
That's what
maybe
I think
two.
too. I'm thinking like scene.
But it almost, because there are other movies, an example that comes to mind is like Angel Heart. Robert De Niro technically was billed as a cameo, but he's in like a third of the movie in Angel Heart. Not an endorsement of seeing Angel Heart. Really weird movie.
I was gonna say, it was like way to choose a really popular example here.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. Yeah, Lisa Bonet's film career was so stellar.
I think
And,
most people would say like, oh, Bill Murray in everything, or like, you know, Zombieland or something like that. You know,
you know what? That's even a good one. I almost wonder if maybe Madeline Kahn is a cameo, but a cameo from a different tradition. But maybe I'm just making a stretch there, because what I'm really trying to get to is fine. I'll table the whole Madeline Kahn discussion, but I'll go over to Harvey Korman, who I think isn't given enough credit. What did you think of Korman's performance in this?
I I tried to look up. I like where they started with him. You know, like where they where he, you know, like his vocabulary was way too big for the people around him. But then they kind of went away from that. Like as the movie went on, he stopped doing that. And um I felt like I know that, like, I looked online, like after I watched this movie, I kind of wanted to I looked at some reviews just to see, like, because I know everybody raves about it, you know, like, and I know that, like, especially men of a certain age, the man I'm talking to, like, really like this
Hurtful.
film. And I tried to see it, like a lot of people kept quoting the Froggy line, or is it Froggy or is it Toady or something like that?
Yeah, Froggy. Yeah, where's Froggy? Yeah.
Yeah, and I really didn't think that scene was funny. I think that kind of turned me off from his performance, like that bath scene, where it's kind of like, okay, like let's move on from the scene. Like I don't understand the relationship between Corman and Pickens. Like I don't get this.
See, I don't think the bath scene is terrific, but I think the rest of him is I think is terrific. I think that Harvey Korman is just a great screen presence in this, and overall, I like. I'll see the bath scene. The Froggy thing I'd never really got into, but when he's just looking out to talk to the hangman, who's done up like a medieval hangman in the Old West, because I think Brooks is just a master of having those anachronistic sort of things to offer a commentary about how barbaric practice of hanging people goes forward all the way into the Old West. I think that Corman is especially gifted at the deadpan reactions and sort of the straight man sort of stuff. I look to the scene where he's manipulating the governor, played by Mel Brooks, and he's so fun and it's sort of like a dismissive intellectual of the governor. And then you go forward to the scene where he's handing, sign the ledger and stuff like that, and he he shoots the guy for chewing gum in line. I think that Corman is great. I think Corman is also great in that zany ending where they wind up running through the movie lot and all of those sorts of things, and he dies in front of the Chinese theater, or what, I don't know what it's called now, but back then that's what
Yeah,
it was called. Um,
but does it top his Star Wars Holiday Special performance?
I knew you were going to go there.
It's hard not to.
I knew you would go there. But the thing is, I don't know if it's maybe just the fact that I watched Harvey Korman as a kid. I watched him on the Carol Burnett show,
Yeah,
and he was,
All in the Family.
I don't know if if it's a holdover of the fact that I just like his style. Do you think it's something as simple as that you either like Harvey Korman's style or you don't?
I think so. I think he has a definite style. Like if you watch his career, like he like you hire him for a reason. I'm not saying he doesn't have range. I'm just saying that there are particular actors that have a great skill set for what they do, and Corman is definitely one of those. And Yeah, I just don't have as many nice things as you do to say about his performance. I thought it was fine. I like it didn't wow me. Like I wasn't really laughing at him the most. Yeah.
So let me offer, do you think that the movie suffers because Middle Child offered this criticism unintentionally at one point where she said, where's the, I can't I can't remember specifically what she said, but it was basically, what's the story?
Where's
She
the
was having
through
trouble
line?
figuring out
Yeah.
what the story was going on. Do you think that this movie suffers from the fact that it jumps around and is not, it doesn't have an underlying connective tissue like, say, an Ace Ventura that has a very clear, he's hired to go look for the, the Super Bowl ring or whatever it is, and or I forget what it was with Ace Ventura. Was it the Super Bowl ring or was it the dolphin that he was looking for?
Well, he was looking for the dolphin, and the lead was a Super Bowl ring.
There you go. But that's a definite through line. He's given a mission and it's clear what he's going through. And so when they do the detours to let Jim Carrey be zany, you still know in the back of your mind this is progressing down a linear storyline. Do you think that Blazing Saddles has that linear storyline, or do you think that it's too scattershot for its own good?
I think it's definitely linear, but it's filled with crap that doesn't matter for the story. And I think the movie should have started with Bart on his horse with a star on his chest riding into town.
Really?
Yes. Like, as I'm watching the movie, I like the same as your Middle Child. Like, I'm thinking to myself, like, good Lord, like, when is this movie going to start? Like, when is the plot going to get going? Like, that we're having a lot of exposition. We're having a lot of people like kind of meander. We're going to try, like, we're establishing the plot, but we haven't gotten the plot going. And I think that was one big thing that I think that might have been why I didn't immediately love Corman, is because he kept establishing the plot, but we weren't moving forward with it. And then once Bart is away from everybody, he's away from Corman, he's away from the governor, and he's got a star on his chest, he's got a smile on his face, and he passes the orchestra.
Yeah. Count Basie Orchestra.
Yeah, that is where the movie should have started, with maybe one scene before it with some setup. And then like give the exposition as he like as the people in the town are just like, oh thank God, the governor has sent us the new, like the new sheriff. I can't wait to meet him, and everything like that. Like, it could have gone on the same way and just have like maybe a little bit more exposition from Bart to say like why he was there, and then like establish from Corman afterwards why they did it or what their through line is. Because that's all the stuff before is, I mean, it may have given you some laughs, but from a story perspective, from a pacing perspective, it was completely unneeded, except for establishing the his crew that's going to help him later on, which we revisit anyway.
Yeah.
Later on with Gene Wilder.
You saved it at the end because I was about to say, but you get to see his relationship with the people that are going to come help them at the end.
Yeah.
The only counter I would offer to that is that it establishes the world that you're in. And the thing is, this is going to sound way too intellectual for a comedy like this. Okay. But it puts the audience, it reminds the audience of how crappy life was for minorities during this time.
Right. Yes, that's true.
And so at the very least, yes, I understand what you're saying in terms of the pacing picking up when he passes the kid. And it's such a funny moment where you have this great music playing and then he passes the actual orchestra that's playing the music that obviously influenced the Zucker brothers when they did later movies. It's so obvious that the comedy movies that came after in the late 70s through the mid 80s borrowed so much from what Brooks establishes here, and the willingness to break that fourth wall and have that chuckle and have moments like, now I just have to, the what you might have to bleep me on this one. The bitch was inventing the candygram. They probably won't even give me credit for it. And that whole joke and punchline are so perfectly constructed. But I do think that the beginning is important because of the fact that you establish what this world is like that you're both commenting on and asking the audience did we really make enough progress since this point?
I think that's a very fair point, and I think probably my compromise to that, again, like, I'm not trying to rewrite the film. I mean, that's, come on, it's a classic. It came out in '74. Like, I'm going back on it with a modern sensibility and a modern, criticism of pacing and direction and everything like that. But I think probably the compromise that I would do is, like, keep, because you make a very valid point. I think keep the work scene, like, keep the opening scene, well, heavily edited down, with Cleveland Little, and, like, establish his character, establish his friends, and, like, again, like, like, I hate to do this, but, like, like, have somebody come up to Slim Pickens and say, like, have, like, Cleavon, like, piss Pickens off, but not, like, hit him over the head, and, like, have somebody come up and say, like, oh, news from the governor, we need to send a new sheriff, to such and such town, blah, 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 blah. Everybody's like, I'm not going to that piece of crap town, and blah, 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 blah. And, like, I can't do that. I can't do that. I got this funny, funny, funny reasons. And then all of a sudden, everybody just kind of looks at Cleavon Little. And then we see him, like, with a star in his chest. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be trying to rewrite the film. It's just, it's just so much stuff that I don't think needs to be in there.
But see, I do think, though, that it's good to call that out because of the fact that it is informed by comic sensibilities of the time and also film sensibilities of the time. And I think that aside from the establishing sort of things, you have a couple of necessary elements that are laid in there. It's hard to argue, though, because as we all definitely acknowledge that, comedy of the past operates differently. You have to look at it through a certain lens. Did it speak to you? Is it your comic sensibility? But the truly enduring comedies tend to be impervious to that, in a sense. Like, if I throw Planes, Trains, and Automobiles out at somebody, even though it can all be solved with a cell phone now, even though running up to the gate is no longer a thing that you can do because we have our great big brother overlords looking over us and looking in our shoes and our belts and our, our coat buckles and bottles of water and stuff like that. So, like, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles cannot happen anymore. It's an impossibility, but it's still very funny and it still works very well.
Well, if you want to keep it in the '70s, and I guess this isn't a comedy, but if you look at Star Wars, that came out in '77, I mean, all of that holds up today. The editing, the pacing, the direction. It's that, like, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying that, like, there's some of the greats, are impervious to modern sensibilities.
But see, even rolling out Star Wars, I love to tell the story of, I have a nephew by marriage. It's my wife's blood nephew, but, so my nephew by marriage. I showed him Star Wars. And this was years ago when he was like 10 years old. And he was bored for the first, like, 25 minutes or so. He kept asking what's going to happen. So I think that sometimes, especially here on the Nerd Party, go figure, we're nerds. Sometimes we can be blinded by the fact that even Star Wars can be victim of its own of its own criticisms by modern sensibility, because the hero takes 20 minutes to show up and those sorts of things. So I wonder, though, if comedy is more susceptible to that we're more willing to give a Star Wars or an Apocalypse Now or a Jaws or anything like that more leeway and more of a built-in judging it by the time it came out without even realizing it.
I think so, absolutely, because like with a sci-fi film, whether it's, you know, like old or new, I mean, like you have that disconnect of, oh, it's sci-fi, you know, like I know what it's a future, even it's a future that we don't imagine today, it's still a futuristic version of something. And with, you know, with Jaws, I mean, that's pretty timeless. That's pretty timeless, the events that happen. And what was another example that you gave? Like there's I think there's
Apocalypse Now.
oh yeah, like it's a war film, you know, like that's a period piece, you know, it's established itself in the time, and we all know about that era and everything like that. And I think like, yeah, like action, thriller, even horror sometimes, um like gives a pass, but comedy is definitely a genre that is hard to look at without it bleeding into modern sensibilities, because either it's funny or it's not. And if you don't find it funny, you're not going to give it any grace on everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're
Yeah.
not going to give it grace on the cinematography or the direction or the editing. Like you've mentioned several times before, like if a movie is really working and you really enjoy it and it's working on so many levels, you can forgive the bad aspects more than if you weren't enjoying it.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you, in terms of enjoying it, and this can be tough because, you know, this is like being in an argument where, you know, I always think of the movie Scrooged, where the ghost of Christmas past says to Frank Cross, he says, garden slugs had more of an interesting life than you did. And Frank Cross says, name one, right? Like, it's a ridiculous, we all love to do it, where it's like, oh yeah, you do that all the time. Name one time I did it. Well, I wasn't taking notes. I'm presenting a point. I would like you to give me, if you can, an example of a comedy bit, or more than one if you want, that works really well for you, and an example of a comedy bit that does not work well for you.
Ooh, can you give me a second to think about it while you give me an example?
I would love to. I will actually regale you with the story of, I suppose I'm more pedestrian in my tastes at times, but the beans scene where they're at the campfire and there's a lot of sound with that. You can hear me laughing right now. I'm laughing through the whole thing. And middle child looks at me and says, verbatim, this I do remember, boys are so gross. Why are you laughing at that? And I said, honey, I'm always going to laugh at this scene. You could play this scene 100 times a day, and I'm going to laugh at the beans scene 100% of the time. And so that would be a comedy bit that works really well. I can pull a lot of examples. I love the way that I love the French Mistake. I think that scene is absolute magic with Dom DeLuise and everybody else, and the big fight that ensues after it. I think there's such a great toss-off joke where the guy playing Hitler sits down in the commissary and they say, and one of his friends says to him, how much longer you got? And he says, oh, they lose me after the bunker scene. Unless you know how Hitler punched out, that joke will fly right past you. I think that every time that Harvey Korman says, that's Hedley, I laugh. I think it's just great. I love little toss-off jokes that are commentary on politicians, like the affairs of state must wait for the affairs of state. It's such a dumb joke, but it works so incredibly well. I love the way that Gene Wilder tells the story of the 6-year-old and how he set down his guns and he walks away. And the little bastard shot me in the ass.
That's my absolute favorite joke. It's like this, the way he delivers it.
Yes.
It's like, little bastard shot me in the ass.
Yep.
Yeah, like that's my answer for one that really works, is because it's just Gene Wilder's delivery, the story, like the story is I wouldn't say it's not a bait and switch, but it's the cousin of a bait and switch. Like it's just
Yeah.
like you expect the story to be over there. It's just like I just turned around and walked away. Like most stories would end right there. He's like, but then the little bastard shot me in the ass.
It's gold.
Yeah, no, that's hilarious. I think I was gonna give the bean scene as one that really didn't work for me. I'm not built that way. I don't find that stuff funny. It went on so long that I started fast forwarding it.
No.
I was like, good Lord. And I just hit the Apple TV, 10-second skip. And I was like, really? You're going to make me skip this? I'm going to have to hit this 3 times to get past it? And to kind of piggyback on that, I thought the Mongo scene that does not work for me. Like when we're first introduced to Mongo.
It's so interesting because Mongo riding into town was originally longer. There were a lot more gags. The Candygram was the last gag of him trying to stop Mongo. And I think it's a testament to the fact that Brooks at least had the sense to say, you know what? This is going on a little long.
Apparently there was a lot of that stuff. Like,
that's what I'm
like
saying.
A lot of the, like there was a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor. Like Mel Brooks said that most of the governor's stuff, like his entire like presence in the film is on the cutting room floor. Like There was a lot more scenes with the governor that ended up getting cut.
Well, I'm grateful for that because more of the governor would not have worked particularly well.
Oh, a side note, since we're talking about the governor. So a friend of mine, like probably my closest friend next to you, and he's 9 years older than me. And I've known him since I was 15. Like we've been friends for 20 years. And we go golfing together, like we will play like frisbee golf together and everything like that. And every single time we'd play any kind of game or sport or something like that, he would make the joke, why do I always get the warped one? And he never told me what it was from. And I just thought it was just a joke that between us. And last night, when they're doing the whole, what are those things called?
The little paddle ball things.
Yeah, paddle ball things. Like when they're doing that, and then he's like, "Why do I always get the warped one?" I like sat up in bed and like pointed at the screen, like, "Oh my God,
oh, so
Benjamin, you liar!"
You were like Leo DiCaprio in the GIF that's popular.
I was very much like I was drinking my cigarette and holding my beer, like.
So okay, give me an example of a joke that does not work well, that you think is either just mechanically wrong or goes on too long or is might be too offensive now to tell.
Well, I thought I did that. Like I thought like the bean stuff went on way too long, and the Mongo stuff felt super like I was like, this is not funny. Like this feels like they're taking advantage of someone who's.
It's more about me trying to make sure that there isn't something that's been overlooked because we're having a good back and forth here, and I'm maybe it's just
do you want me to say like because I'm a millennial like this is offensive? No. Like is that what you're trying to get me to say?
I'm not trying to bait that at all. Mainly because of the fact that I think comedy is such an interesting sort of thing to approach. And I think that there are so many things, and I think that one of the things that really gets lost in the debate with a movie like Blazing Saddles or Airplane for that matter, or The Naked Gun or anything like that is the fact that, yeah, you made an age joke earlier, but comedy works better for those of us who are rooted more to that time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so I almost wonder if what it is that our parents were more comfortable with the idea that comedy of the past would not work with the present day. I always talk about the fact that my dad, I would watch stuff with my dad on PBS where they would have reruns of The Honeymooners, or they would have reruns of, believe it or not, Amos and Andy. And I would sit there watching the televised Amos and Andy, and I would say, oh, and my dad would say, yeah, this is maybe not really something that would happen today.
They won't even let you buy the 30 Rock episode that parodies Amos and Andy. Like that's how bad it's gotten.
But that's the sort of thing that I think is unfortunate, especially when talking about a movie like Blazing Saddles, is the fact that I think that regardless of whether you think Blazing Saddles is funny or not, it is important to watch it at some point if you're a cinephile, to understand where we've been. Like, film basically becomes a cultural record of how much we have progressed. So even if you watch Blazing Saddles and you say, I can't believe they made those jokes, almost 50 years later, you can say, but look, we wouldn't make those jokes anymore. We wouldn't use those references and lean on the escape of saying it's humor to make those jokes. And so you can look back on these things. I think they become incredibly important to the cultural record so that we can understand where we've been from. Like, if we suddenly stop watching Blazing Saddles or putting Blazing Saddles up there for people to see, then we lose an important touchstone for things. It's like erasing a work of art from 1,000 years ago. Well, we might not think that works now. We might not be as religious. We might not be as this or as that, but it's a work of art from then. So it lets us understand the time that we went through to get to today.
I absolutely agree. Like, I'm very much with you when it comes to watching classic films, even if they're not your type of genre, even if you don't think you're going to like it. I think there's certain films that you absolutely need to see. I mean, like, this is one of those movies, and I think it's on the 1,001 movies that you need to see before you die. This is on the list. This is high on the list, I think. And yeah, I think it's very important to see, like, also, like, all the references made to it from people in your life or in other films or in pop culture. It's important to know certain things. Like, if you've never seen Citizen Kane, how would you get all these other references? Like, if you've never seen Godfather, which we're gonna cover in a couple of weeks, how on earth do you get all, like, aren't you lost with all these going to the mattresses references? Like, things like that. Like, you're gonna get lost in the conversation if you don't understand your past, especially if you're a film nerd like we are. There's certain things that, and that goes for, like, silent movies, foreign movies, indie films, everything like that. Like, you're going to get lost unless you see some of the classics and some of the greats, even if you don't think you're going to like them. And that's why I'm a big fan of putting things within their cultural context. So, like with Gone with the Wind, like, there was a big uproar because it's on HBO Max, and they, like, people insisted on putting a disclaimer at the beginning, and then, like, having as historian talk about how it was made and why it was made in that certain way. I'm like, I'm all for that. I think that's fantastic. Go ahead, give older movies that, like, contain sensitive material today their cultural context, but let's not take them away. Let's not try to erase them from history because we're ashamed of the content. No, that's horrible. Like, let people decide for themselves whether or not they're going to consume that, or if they want to study that or research that or even enjoy that. Let people choose, but cultural context is king.
Yeah. I couldn't say it better, honestly. And I think that at the very least, even if it doesn't work for you, you have to respect what Blazing Saddles represents in terms of just that. I think that the late 60s through the 70s, comedy was a very smash mouth commentary tool that was out there for people to talk about the current condition and what was going on in society and the topics that were important at the time. So hopefully, any trying times that we feel we've been through will offer some great examples of comedy that we can then turn around, and hopefully if cyborg technology picks up in 50 years, I can still be talking about. But I got to know, Tristan, you've seen it for the first time all the way through. I got to know, how many fake rock ridges do you give Blazing Saddles?
John, I hated this movie.
Oh my goodness. Oh no. I'm so heartbroken. Oh no.
I think you did a really good job of dancing around me having to outright say it until now.
Okay.
I think you did a fantastic job hosting this podcast. I think you did a great job of being an interviewer as well as commentator, and knowing that I would have certain things that I might not like or might like with this movie. And it would have been a lesser man would have asked me right off the bat, like, so how did you feel? You didn't do that. You have gumption and pride. And I'm giving you all these compliments because I know that this movie holds a special place in your heart. I hated this movie, John. This was so bad in my opinion. Like, it was such a chore to get through. And when I watched it with my wife, and when we were done, we were angry because I was like, we could have done anything else, but no, we had to watch that movie for this podcast. I maybe smirked 3 times and just laughed out loud once with the shot me in the ass line. And everything else was just, oh my God. Like, the pacing killed me. The direction was horrible. The writing was lackluster. A lot of the performances were like from the side characters were not entertaining, and just the cinematography was uninspired. The editing was really poor, and it's just, I'm like, on a comedy like this, specifically a spoof Mel Brooks film, I should not be thinking about the editing and cinematography. And it's just, I understand that if you were, and you made this point about Star Wars, like, if you were, like, we separate ourselves as nerds from the zeitgeist a little bit, but like, if you weren't raised on it, you regardless of what time you watched it, because you were born in 74, you didn't watch it in 74, but you watched it as a young person with your dad, just like I did with Star Wars. And so I completely recognize that if I was exposed to this at a young age with, my own guide, I might be thinking about it differently in 2021. But I know that some people listening are thinking like, oh, you're an oversensitive millennial, like, you just thought, like, you couldn't see it for satire. Like, no, that stuff didn't offend me. Like, I definitely had the whoa, like, a few times, like, where it definitely took me back. But no, this has nothing to do with the content being offensive. I don't mind that. Like, I can understand when it came out, what Mel Brooks was trying to say with it. I get it. I'm just not laughing. And I did not find this funny at all. This was not my film.
And that's fair. So are we talking 0?
No. I think because of the cultural impact, I have to show it some respect. So I'm not going to give it a 0. But because I have to recognize the time in which it was made, the impact that it's had. Freaking Obama talked about this film, and how great it is. I mean, that's gigantic. So with that respect in mind, I give it 2 stars.
Wow. I mean, the thing is, I can't take away from that, right? Like, I never would. I think that's probably why you and I can respect each other, right?
Yeah,
is like,
that's why you and I work in a lot of other levels that most people don't hear. Like, but John and I have these kind of conversations all the time, and if we bite each other's heads off, it's always in jest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm always going to be the first person to concede that comedy is the hardest thing because it is different for everybody. And I cannot discount the emotional aspect of coming to this movie. I can sit there and talk intellectually about Star Wars properties until I'm blue in the face. But we all know that there was a young boy, very young boy, many years ago that saw Star Wars in the movie theater, and he is still watching it, right? Like
Mhm.
that is still a factor that you have to take into account. And similarly with this, I can concede that there are pacing issues. I can concede that there are things that I would cut out, but not even cut out, but can honestly look at it and say, you don't need to say that right there. Maybe over here you can say that and it's justified, but over here it feels a little indulgent. Maybe we could cut that part. Or even going in and saying, as much as I love that the ending is this zany, fourth wall breaking, insane thing that goes on, because I find certain jokes in it funny, I'm willing to just go along with it. So I feel obligated to say that if I come at this from a point of view of somebody who is as much of a hard ass about rating movies as I'm known to be, it's a 4.
That's surprising because I know you love this movie.
But recognizing all of that cultural stuff, I feel obligated to give it a 5 because I think that this movie is a guidebook for sitting down, just like I did with Middle Child, and saying, notice how everybody's last name is Johnson and this town is full of racists. It is saying you would have to literally be an inbred redneck to think that it's okay to behave this way. Little stuff like that means a lot because it is coming also from the perspective of a Jewish man who was involved in World War II, coming forward and talking about the absolute rot that bigotry induces to a culture when you don't even acknowledge it, when you don't even recognize what it causes. And that is why I will wind up giving it a 5, because I think that it is just that important to acknowledge those sorts of things, while at the same time knowing and validating all of the reasons you gave it a 2.
And I want to say that, and for the listeners, this is not just John and I blowing sunshine up each other, but like John, honestly, like I think everything that you said tonight was incredibly cogent, was absolutely spot on, was intelligently stated, because there's a lot of times that you could focus on just either the rough humor, the gruff humor, the I don't want to say the racism, but like the satirical bigotry. Like it would have been really easy to kind of focus on the lowbrow aspects of it, but you tried to focus on the message, which I think is important and why this movie is important. And even though I don't like this movie, I can recognize that it's important and that its message is important, and it's a cultural touchstone, and that itself makes it validates it. And you know me, I'm not one of those people who will say like, oh, if I don't like a movie, then it's bad. Or if you like a movie that I don't, well, you're wrong. I'm not one of those people. I mean, there's a few movies, like if you like Aquaman, you're wrong. But
we can agree on that one.
We can agree on that one. Like I keep a few in the back pocket, but 99% of the time I'm not that person. But this is not one of those movies where like I'm watching this. I'm just like, man, like this is one of the worst films I've seen in a long time. But not because it's a bad movie, but because it's just not for me. Like I should really say this was one of my worst experiences in a long time, because you can't say this is a bad movie. This is beloved. This is on the top of so many people's lists, and professional lists and public lists and everything like that. This is like I said, like when I can't remember who was honoring Mel Brooks, but Obama was there honoring Mel Brooks, and he talked about Blazing Saddles. You know, like a black president, a sitting black president talked about Blazing Saddles and how amazing it was to the person who made it decades previously. That's gigantic. That's huge.
Well, undoubtedly, anybody who is in Gen X who has heard your opinion of Blazing Saddles is going to want to engage with you online. So please, by all means, offer yourself up as the sacrificial victim for that act. Where can people find you online?
Well, you can find me right here on the network at thenerdparty.com. Just go ahead and look at the hosts, and you can find me there and everywhere that I podcast. But if you find me more directly, you can find me on Twitter at The Insane Robin, as well as Letterboxd at The Insane Robin. And I feel like those Gen Xers out there who are seething and steaming in their seats and wanting to shoot me off a horrible email, please remember how many qualifiers I gave at the end of here, and how many honest answers and how many compliments I gave John. You know, like I want you all to focus on that.
While I would like them to focus on that, I would rather they be as vicious as possible with you. And be sure to tag me on your viciousness with Tristan.
And where can they tag you?
At Kessel Junkie, KESSELJUNKIE. Probably the most fun place to interact is on Letterboxd, because we can only talk about movies over there. So, like that's a safe place. That is a place where we can all agree. Even if we disagree about movies, like Tristan and me, we can at least agree to be have some fun and be respectful.
Right.
You can also find me here on the network, co-hosting Aggressive Negotiations with Matthew Rushing. It is a Star Wars podcast of a slightly different sort, and we encourage everybody to join in and listen and participate. That is Aggressive Negotiations on the Nerd Party. But in the interim, Tristan, I have forgotten how we end this show.
Well, next week, we're going to be talking about Mel Brooks's second 1974 film, Young Frankenstein, with the one and only Gene Wilder, and Madeline Kahn makes an appearance too. And so we're going to get all that, and we're going to have some laughs. We're going to have some discussion. It's going to be devoid of color, only in the visual sense, but not within our hearts. So please tune in next week as we do Young Frankenstein. And after that, we're going to open up the door to the House of Coppola.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.